Hi, everyone. Our discussion today will center around a case study of collective action in Colombia known as the Plataforma de Costilla del Agua en Frio and Sevilla watersheds. Our two panelists today are Guyan de Silva from WWF US and Johanna Schmiester from WWF Germany. Unfortunately, Una was unable to make it today. Guyan, can you give a quick introduction to the Plataforma, please?
Yeah, sure. So the platform was established to preserve a well-known wetland in Colombia called the Ciénaga Grande. This is a large wetland that provides sanctuary for migrating birds and other endangered species and livelihoods for surrounding fishing communities. And the wetland depends on like a mix of salt and fresh water. Salt water coming from the Caribbean and fresh water coming from the Rio Frio and Sevilla and other rivers that originate in the mountains of the Sierra de Santa Marta. What's happening is agriculture in the region is, they source their irrigation from the two rivers. In the dry season, those rivers dry up, and then there's less fresh water flowing into the wetland, and then that upsets the salinity balance. In addition to that, fertilizers and pesticides that are used cause eutrophication and impacts on fish species as well. In addition, and also, there's biodiversity impacts, there's also community impacts as well. The communities are feeling the impacts of climate change and drought, floods, and also lack of access to safe drinking water. So the platform was really established to address all of the above, basically.
Perfect, thank you. And how did you each get involved in the Plataforma?
Maybe I can start, yeah. And I'm also representing a bit the EDECA WWF Germany partnership, so I'm speaking for both partners a little bit here. And we started our partnership on water stewardship 10 years ago in 2012, and we just recently signed a new partnership agreement for another 10 years. So it's really a long-term commitment from both sides on water stewardship issues. And back in 2012, like the water risk filter was just launched. In 2014, the AWS Alliance for Water Stewardship just published their standard. And with EDECA, we were really pioneering these tools and methodologies in places also like Colombia. And so we have some of the collective action projects on the ground where we work on a site level, but also on a basin level together with EDECA. And I guess like always, you have a look at a supply chain, you open up the water risk filter, you identify your hotspots, and also look at the strategic importance of certain commodities for the company. And I mean, for EDECA, this was bananas from Colombia, and focusing on bananas was a no-brainer. It's the second most favorite fruit sold in Germany, and so it was clear that we wanted to work on that. And we wanted to focus on conventional banana farming because it's more than 80% of the market share. And in order to have a high impact, that was our first target. And so, yeah, when we had a closer look into the Colombian case and in the region of Santa Marta, we saw that, like Guyan mentioned, that there are water risks that go beyond the farm's fence lines and cannot be addressed within the farm's fence lines. So the farms are working on irrigation management. They're working on building buffer zones to rivers and all these things. But flood and drought events, conflicts with other water users, degradation of ecosystems, and then increasing aridity due to climate change, it's hard to address it within the farm. So it was clear that we needed some sort of vehicle, some mechanism to work with other stakeholders, and this was the Plataforma. And EDECA has been both financing it, but also providing a business case for farmers to stay or to join that, and via long-term contracts, communication opportunities, and stuff like that. So I think that's how we got involved. That's how the EDECA and us, the partnership, got involved.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and a similar story, and I'm Una could be here, but I'm speaking on behalf of the WWF Starbucks partnership too. A similar story, we partnered with Starbucks at the start of their water stewardship journey, helped develop strategy, and did a water risk assessment of their commodities. Obviously, coffee is a huge part of their business. Through the risk assessment, we identified the Magdalena Basin as a priority basin for them, and the Rio Frio and Sevilla basins is sort of a part of that. And then, quite independently, So this platform was already, up and running with Edica supporting them, working on banana farming. But quite independently, the project team and the communities had identified a need to work with coffee farmers because these banana farmers, it turns out, they were sort of shifting to sustainable practices, but their water source was actually being threatened by coffee farmers upstream of them in the sort of middle and upper basin. So they had identified this need to work with coffee farmers. And then we sort of did some cross-mapping and found out that there were a cluster of Starbucks suppliers in that coffee belt. And it was sort of like a match made in heaven. We got Starbucks engaged in sort of the platform, and they are now supporting coffee farmers in the coffee belt of that region so that they can improve their practices so that the water flowing out of their farms is in better condition for the banana farmers to use. And then the banana farmers are improving their practices so that the water flowing out of their farms is in better condition for the wetland as well. So it's a kind of cool story up and down the watershed.
Awesome, very cool. It appears that the platform works with stakeholders across the length of the watershed. What were some of the challenges encountered in bringing these entities together and engaging in the platform?
I think the main challenge that we saw and are still seeing there is a great lack of trust between stakeholders, between water users, especially between farmers and the authorities there, but also between communities and the farmers, or between the indigenous communities living upstream in this area in Nevada mountain range and sort of the downstream water users. So what helped there is that WWF Colombia was perceived as sort of like a neutral player in the sphere, and provided basically the foundation for dialogue and to address these controversial topics and to bring everyone to a table. And I think there was a great sense of urgency also because there were recent flood events, there were recent drought events, so everyone felt that we needed to do something there. So I think that helped, and also the Plataforma immediately started to share knowledge, share the risk assessment, for example, or e-flow assessments and stuff like that. So make this common knowledge and also build capacities locally. And I think these were measures sort of to build trust and also to show the stakeholders that they can really participate and steer the platform. I think that was crucial there as well. And we did not completely overcome this issue. It's still an issue and will always remain. But I think it's we're in a position where we can manage this. I think what we see now as challenges as well is building stronger local leadership. Because also WWF Colombia, together with a consultancy called Good Stuff International, they are sort of facilitating the platform and managing it. But it would be good to see more decision making in the hands of local leaders. And I think building this local leadership is really high on our priority list, as well as this financial sustainability. Because we heard there are two corporate partners sort of funding this, but this is a bit risky for a platform or a platform like this. So what if the supply chain focuses of these companies changes or something like that? So to put to find different channels for funding the platform is important to us, to open this up to other partners, be they private, so other corporates to invest there, but also private-public partnerships, bankable nature solutions, stuff like that. We are exploring that a lot. So there are a few challenges that will remain, and a lot to do.
Perfect. Thank you. And what makes this platform community-driven? Why do these farmers want to participate?
Yeah, while the platform was born out of the need to preserve a wetland, it is sort of community-centered. The crux of it is voluntary conservation agreements where they got into the community and sort of get a commitment from communities to work on certain conservation measures, and then in return the platform commits to supporting and incentivizing farmers to sort of switch these methods. And before some of the activities done include restoration and coffee processing improvements and things like that. And before that's all done, there's been a social survey, an ecological survey of each land, each piece of land, and characterizing, tailoring what sort of things are needed for each piece of land, not just for ecosystem benefits, but for productivity benefits as well. And the farmers do want to participate because they are feeling the effects of climate change, and they want to improve their resilience too. And the business case is stronger for them when companies further down the supply chain like Starbucks, Edeka, and then there are other local companies who are also engaged too, when they are also sort of involved in this. And I should add, like with the coffee component of the project, part of it is actually funded by the banana suppliers downstream as well. So there's sort of like an added sort of angle there too. I would also add that there are some cool community stories coming out of it. For example, the platform funded a sort of women's foundation in tree nurseries. So it sort of was a capacity building exercise for women in restoration, and that has now given them an additional income stream in addition to coffee too. And there have been other initiatives too on solid waste management and things like that. It's sort of catering to the needs of the community and also for the wetland too, and they often both converge.
There you go. Excellent. And what do you see as the role of corporates in this platform, and what is your call to action?
Yeah, I think what we need to see more is collective action, not only in places like this, and not only along supply chains. So, for example, here Edeka and Starbucks are working also with Dole and other supply chain actors there, but also working like pre-competitively and to really open this up to other places and to other players, like internationally also. And I think the role of a company like Edeka is not to sit at the stakeholder table and sort of lobby their agenda, but to provide the infrastructure and enable and empower the local stakeholders to sort of like steer their watershed management on their own. And I mean, they can provide the business case for this, definitely. They can liaise with other international like development cooperation organizations. They can also put in their expertise. So there are a lot of different ways in how they can engage. And I don't know if you wanted to add to this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like as you said, it's it's reducing the burden on your suppliers, not just saying you should be sustainable because we're the buyer, but trying to bridge that transition cost. Maybe a temporary lull in productivity can be bridged by sort of corporations like this. In addition to like financial things, it's also using using the brand in a positive way to like bring more stakeholders to the table. Sometimes it does carry some clout when you're like, oh, Starbucks is at the table. Let's bring more stakeholders in. It's always we're looking. Every platform wants to expand their impact and things like that. And while companies can support financially directly, they can also help seed funding. It's a strange thing that when you have more money in a platform, it attracts more money. So like seeding that funding and like bringing in those, maybe attracting more like public funds and things like that, and catalyzing these sort of like public-private partnerships too. I think there are like multiple roles a corporation can play. Also offering their expertise in like agri-business or like business development in general. And sort of like in closing, I think it's just a good example of like how different companies can engage in like multiple areas of a watershed, and the kind of synergies that run with that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Any questions for the audience? I think.
Are we able to take questions from the audience?
We can take questions if you repeat them.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It sounds like a great model and a lot of potential. Wondering, in terms of the time and energy and resources that go into building this partnership, what's the possibility to replicate, or what would be your recommendations on how to replicate?
How long did it take with Edeka to...
Yeah, I think it's a there are a lot of learnings there, and we try to replicate that. And I think this is also, for example, for WWF Colombia, this was also the great value of the plataforma, because normally their focus lies in other regions within Colombia, but they saw that it has a lot of potential, and they are now sort of like replicating the mechanism in other areas in the country as well. And I think, for example, the farms in the region, the project farms, all got Alliance for Water Stewardship certified. So it's also feeding back into standard systems like the AWS system, and contributes to the water stewardship discourse internationally, not only locally. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is directly related to your question, but it was also a mix of like top-down and bottom-up approaches, where it was top-down in one sense, in that like Edeka had identified a need to work on bananas in this region, and then that's how like the platform kind of came into being. But then also there was a bottom-up thing of like the communities and the project team identified a need to work with coffee farmers, and then mapping that back up to like which company sources from them. So those sorts of approaches, I think, a mix of those can help too. I think the bottom-up one is a little bit more challenging, but maybe more needed when you have a region, like who sources from that area, and then can we engage them in, you know, supporting sustainable agriculture or whatever it is. Yeah.
Please.
Do you work with the larger companies that sort of buy from the farmers to understand who it is passing up the supply chain as the end user? Because I think quite often with farmers, it's hard to understand who the end user is for a product when it goes through subsidiaries and on the way up. Is there a space there, do you think, for targeting that sort of bigger players and joining that strategy?
Yeah, I think that's possibly a work in progress. Again, like mapping up to like who the end user is. There's a lot of middlemen as well to figure out. It was fortunate for us that we had independently mapped Starbucks as supply chains, so then we just sort of knew that they were in the area, whereas the Colombia project team had independently, figured that they had a need in the region. But I think, quite a few organizations are working on that, but I don't know if you have any examples.
Yeah, regarding the question whether larger trading companies like intermediaries are involved in the banana sector, definitely. So Dole, Total Produce, they're part of the project, and in Colombia, the banana business is managed by a company called Tecbaco. So we have the players from the farm over the trader to the retailers all joining the project, and all have different shares in sort of like what burden can they take and what commitments can they make. Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, I'd like to thank you both for joining me today, and thank you all for listening and coming today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.